Hello, my name is Taylor Bradley, and thank you for tuning in to look at this content here today. Today, what I'm going to discuss with you related to the Disney 100 project is a couple key concepts. We're going at a very high level. We're going to talk about career model frameworks, time and role and its expansion, identifying the distributions of time and role, and then how those overlap with something such as career experience and time and role. Now, these will only just be a walkthrough, but it is something that I love to do. I hope you learn. I hope I can learn from this. And as Steve Rogers would say, I can do this all day. First, we're going to dive into the career model framework. Now, the career model framework before you is a generic version. It is a Radford based career model framework. And what I mean from that is that Radford typically on the independent contributor side will have 6 levels associated with it, with one being entry level employee down here or a new college grad. If this were software engineers, you may see a term like associate software engineer. And then as you go up and to the right, level 6 will be a principal engineer. This is someone with extensive knowledge, scope, and types of roles that they work with within the organization. So, what in particular we're going to be discussing today with that is the time in role. So, if I'm a level 1, how long do we typically expect this level 1 to be in the role before they get promoted to the next level? And based on some historical context there. Other key things I will say is that this level system will differ from organization to organization. It's like the fingerprint of an organization. Some companies will have more levels and they will narrow or broadband their levels. And what that means is they may take these two roles and combine them together to make one long journey in that particular role. Or they could do some narrow banding where they take this level 6, they split it into two, and add in to make a 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, or 40th level, whatever you want to go with there. So we're only going to stick with the generic because this is just to evaluate a high level concept of what a career model framework is, and in particular, what time and role looks like for those particular things. So this will be it's worth noting that company specific information will be different than what we discuss here today. So we're going to look at now the time in role and what that promotion velocity staircase looks like. So promotion velocity is just the simple concept of the time and role typically associated with gaining the proficiency needed to advance to the next level within your organization. And this will be in your company as defined by the organization and its development culture. So today, again, keeping it very generic, very simplistic. In this case, I went ahead and built 6 levels within the staircase here. And these types of overlapping distributions can be very common when you start to look into this data, whether it be tenure, whether it be compensation, whether it be promotion velocity. It can certainly have this staircase type of feel to it, and we'll see that a bit more in the career experience that we're going to discuss here in just a minute or so. But this staircase methodology is something that naturally you do see occur within the business, and it may differ from business to business on how broad this overlap may be or it may not be, but in this case, this is what we're going to look at today. So each one of these little blocks represents a unit of time. I have intentionally not been specific on how long those units of time are because we're only talking about the concept, not any kind of company specific data where a unit of time would have a direct correlation to a month or a year or something like that. But it's just to articulate the concept here. And we're only looking at time and role. There are many different factors that go into promoting someone, but we're just looking at time and role today. So in particular, what we want to look at is we'll pick on level 4 here. Level 4 software engineers, whatever their titles are. I want to go back, historically look at every single level 4 engineer in the company and when time and role for the individual were they promoted to a level 5 and understand what that distribution of time and role looks like. So we're actually looking at actual examples, actual promotions. This is not looking at something like the percentage of people that are eligible that are in a window for a potential promotion that are promoted or forecasting that per se. This is actually looking at more descriptive data to get understand of what is, and then we can ask the question later based on the data what should be. So we're just looking at what is. So say we pull all that data for level 4s that were promoted to level 5s, and we're comparing apples to apples. Level 4 has been the same for in perpetuity. It hasn't changed materially in the company, so we're pulling apples to apples. And when we pull that data, we come up with a distribution. And in particular, since we are just looking at level 4s and level 5s, I've zoomed in here so we can get a closer look at what that looks like. And when I put that data on a distribution, we get this. We get a normal distribution bell curve. And I am going to point out here that I'm just using a normal bell curve for the sake of the illustration to help simplify this idea of this concept. These distributions may be skewed one way or another, may look a lot different, may be very peaked. It really just depends on the organization, of which we're not looking at that type of data currently. So in this case, the level 4s that are promoted to level 5s, historically, all the ones that actually took place, there's a median, or most of them occurred right in this area. And then as we go higher in tenure, the amount of people that were actually promoted with this tenure gets smaller and smaller. And similar here at the front end of the distribution, 1 or 2 units a time, very limited amount of people were promoted from level 4 to level 5 at that point. But in this case, we looked at the data. This was the distribution we got. So let's go ahead and expand this bell curve a little bit here to see what we can come up with. So this is just an expanded view of this. And in particular, our level 4s, again, when we looked at the data of actual promotions, if you go one deviation out from the mean, 68% of our software engineers that were level 4 were promoted between 5 and 6 units of time in role previously. If we go out 2 deviations, 95% of all of our level 4 software engineers that were promoted from level 4 to level 5 were promoted between 4 units of time and 7 units of time, and so on and so on. If you're not familiar with the normal distribution, I've put a link here in the description today to a video that kind of covers what that is and what that would look like and the implications of that. But in this case, most of our engineers that were promoted in the company's history from level 4 to level 5 occurred here. Now, how does that help us? Well, let's take a look. If we know that 68% of our engineers were promoted during this period of time, and then about 95% were promoted during this period of time in role, we get a thorough understanding of what is. So then we can ask the question, what should be? Should we adjust anything? Is there something of concern here? Knowing these distributions by level, if you have enough data points, can really give you the power to ask the right questions, to address and identify anomalous behavior, to look at trends year over year. What way are we trending? Are we maintaining kind of this standard distribution, or all of a sudden is it skewing to the left in a big way? Are we now promoting everyone 1 or 2 units of time? And anytime that there's a material change here in this distribution, or there's a material anomaly from a sample employee one way or the other, those can be great opportunities to drum up hypothesis of what's happening and then test it to find out if that's something good or something bad. We're agnostic, right? Because we don't want to make arbitrary decisions. We want to make thoughtful decisions. So this case today, we're just talking about the idea of identifying what are your current time and role promotion velocities for each one of your levels. We are not talking about the different influences that are impacting here and sharing and demonstrating that. All I would encourage you to do is get good, clean data look at things that many folks aren't looking at, and then help drive change if needed, help the data drive change, or pose the right questions, ask the right, or drum up the right hypothesis to test. Again, we want to think in distributions and not minimums in this case. So, a couple of examples would be if you had a manager come in here and they want to promote someone from a level 4 to a level 5, but this sample employee right here has only been time and role 1 unit of time. That's anomaly. That's probably 4 deviations out from the mean. There's nothing inherently right off the bat wrong or right with that. That's just a question. The manager is posing the hypothesis that they believe that this person is a level 5. Now it's time to test it. Was this person part of an acquisition and they were misleveled when they came in, and now that they're in the organization, the managers assess their qualities and strongly believes they're level 5? Then this sample employee right here, that would make sense. That seems to have a justification behind it. Similarly, we don't want to let our guard down either. If we have an employee that's right here and the manager puts him forth with promotion but with no justification or something off here, uh, just because they happen to be right in the crux here where most people get promoted doesn't mean that that's actually a justified promotion. It's worth doing the calibration, and the reason I say this stuff is because we want to strive for equality in our promotion process. Consistency is what you're hearing from employees. And one of the things I call out often is the challenge and the opportunity of having high quality talent is that they have options. Their LinkedIn inboxes are always getting filled up with requests from other organizations. So the best thing to do is to build a strong development and engagement platform for your employees so they feel invested in and they continue to grow and you retain that high quality talent in your organization. And in order to do that, you want to be consistent, you want to be fair and equitable within your promotion process in particular. And this distribution doesn't solve everything. This is just to help you start building up more of a data driven type process, going back to the basics to understand what's happening in the organization beyond a simple macro number of how many promotions do we have year over year. Oh, that must mean that we are better engaged. Back that up with data and test those hypotheses. So then finally, something you've seen if you've gone through the Disney 100 project is you've seen this chart. And this is a graph that represents 100 HRBPs that I looked at and their careers and their resumes that were currently working at Disney. I broke them up into their categories of their current roles and then lined out their years of experience by 3 different levels. Those levels are career experience, so this is all the experience one would have on your resume, whether it's HR or not, so cumulative. HR umbrella experience, which is also cumulative, and that could be recruiting, compensation, anything else like that. And then HRBP tracks specific experience. And one of the things that I love, here's that staircase, that natural staircase again. We start to see these overlapping distributions, but they tend to make sense when you look at them. And we do not think arbitrarily. We think in distributions, not minimums. So we're not going to pull one data point out here and rely solely on that. We're going to pull that into a greater context to have a more thoughtful discussion around our employees' development, our recruitment, things of that nature. These distributions represent the interquartile range, and these little gray tic tacs represent the median within that distribution of that sample group of 100 HRBPs. So one of the things I will call out is you start to pull in these different types of distributions to make a stronger narrative, a stronger context, stronger understanding of your workforce. And if I'm a sample employee here and I'm hired in as an HRBP and this is the only experience I have, or it's hard to show kind of cumulative, but as I'm going along here and gaining cumulative career experience, I'm also gaining in parallel time in role. And this is where organizations, if you do this extra research on the side as a business partner, you can start to paint that picture of how does time and role interact with career experience and the types of career experiences that folks have? Today, I've applied this to HRBPs, but I've applied this to all of my different client groups I've worked with, and in particular, engineering over the course of the past several years, working with different engineering organizations. And what's been interesting is there's been some similarities, but also some unique parts of the organization when you look at this type of stuff. But let's go through a quick example of how these two interact, and then I'll wrap it up for you here today, because I only want to keep it high level. If we have our sample employee here, the bouncing dot, and we hire them in at the HRBP level, and let's hire them in at, they have 4 years of HRBP experience, so just above the median, woohoo! And they continue on with their career at Disney. And they've been there a few years, and their manager decides that it's time to promote them. And so time and roles accumulated. It's kind of inconsistent, or it's been consistent with other promotions, and they go ahead and promote this individual down here to a manager, HRBP. Congratulations, LinkedIn post, the whole 9 yards. And it makes rough sense. If you look here, without knowing this dot's total career experience, it's above the median for HRBP, which that isn't an arbitrary reason to decide to promote someone, but they've gained the proficiency. May have taken them a little bit longer than the rest of the HRBPs, but they had some great proficiency. And remember, proficiency isn't the only variable to consider a promotion. There's the business needs, budget, and things of that nature as well that managers are taking into consideration. But they promoted him, they go in the role, and they are doing excellent. They've taken on all sorts of different opportunities. They continue to work with Disney. They're loving the new Marvel movies coming out and having a blast. And then their manager decides, you know what? It's time to promote this sample employee again. And I want to promote them to a director role. And that is a skip level promotion. And if you're an HR practitioner, you're already code red flag. Skip level promotion is breaking the system, right? A skip level promotion, the way that I would look at that is it is an anomaly. It's an anomaly, it's a hypothesis worth testing. What is the reasoning behind doing a skip level promotion? That is very anomalous in organizations for that to happen. But remember, we think in distributions. We don't think in minimums. And so in that case, that may be 5 deviations out from the mean, but that happens. There's a small probability of that happening, but it can still happen. You could have someone that is truly gifted at what they do. They have developed proficiencies 5 deviations beyond and making an impact 5 deviations beyond others within the organization, and it aligns with a business need, aligns with budget, etc., etc. They go into promotion calibration, and after some great discussions, one of the things that is highlighted is we expect our directors to have more career experience. And as you can see, this delta here is interesting, and where that practically played out for director HRBPs that were currently in this role is they typically had a lot of non-HR experience, and oftentimes that was within Disney and one of the business units. And so that was one of the call-outs maybe made in the calibration process. That wasn't the only arbitrary piece, but what was recommended back to the manager was, let's make them a senior manager, because we don't want to put them in a role they're not prepared for, and it's too much of a stretch goal. But maybe we'll evaluate that director role sooner rather than what we normally would in whatever process they have. So they're being thoughtful. They want to set this employee up for success, but they want to retain high quality talent because they know high quality talent has options. And so they go to the drawing board, they come up and say, let's make senior manager. And that's more contextually kind of in line with what is occurring. I don't remember the exact spot we had, but it tends to be more in line, a little bit faster. So it's still kind of showing that this person's moving up quickly without knowing kind of their other experience, but certainly within normal means. Now, here's one thing that I want to point out and how this ties in with time and role, because we think thoughtfully. We go on for a very short period of time, whatever that is here on the chart, and the manager says, nope, this person is absolutely a director. I have a business need. I have a budget. They've been in this senior manager role for a short period of time, and they did some sit-ins in other business areas outside of HR, to meet kind of the other concerns. They've addressed it. They've exploded past all of those different boundaries, totally ready for a director role. And the leadership says, yes, I agree. But then there's the one person that's thinking not in distributions, that says, but wait a minute. This person has only been time in role, so we're back on the time in role chart, 1.5 units of time. That breaks my mind. I can't think about that way. But then you encourage that leader. We're not judgmental. We acknowledge the concern, and we address it. We start to think in distributions. Yes, that is an anomaly on the time in role metric. It is greatly outside, but this is that 1%. This is that 0.01% person. Here's all the justification. Here's the business justification behind it, and then it makes sense. And then the team comes together and says, okay, thoughtful decision made. We're going to go back. We're going to promote this person to a director. They've continued to engage that. And so this is where these things start to overlap. Having this data for your executives is often not available, at least what I've heard from other colleagues in mid-sized tech companies. So there's a real opportunity, I think, for business partners here to do this type of work and present this kind of data to their leaders to help make more informed decisions, to help identify trends that would otherwise go overlooked, and of course, to get them to consider distributions versus just arbitrary minimums. So in conclusion here, that was the quick walkthrough. This is only the basics. I could spend an entire day, or we could spend an entire day discussing maybe just one of these topics and how they come together. This is just to get folks some thinking here. We want to make sure we're making thoughtful decisions, not arbitrary ones. As I've said in my other content, think in distributions and not in minimums. And these graphs are to illustrate concepts, not a one-size-fits-all approach. That's incredibly important. Every organization is incredibly unique, and certainly these things can act as fingerprints for the organization, but you can still take a similar approach. Like I mentioned in my talk, my Manhattan talk, assess the situation, determine what the needs are, and provide an outcome. That's the MEDICS method. You can do that same approach with helping define what is kind of the, normative approach, what is with the data, and then what should be. And having this level of data and insight can certainly compel you to make, ideally, more informed decisions and thoughtful decisions. But finally, this is something that I just do for fun, totally on the side. I love it because it encourages me to learn, but I hope you're learning along with me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Stay engaged. I have some more content on my website, er2hr.com. And remember, this is just for fun, but I encourage you to also engage and do this type of work in your organization as well. Thank you for listening.